Okay, so I am about halfway through the 800 grid now, and I just want to show you guys on camera as much as possible what to look out for when you're sharpening. So I'm honestly not very sure how much you can see on the camera, but what you're looking for, okay, right here in this shot, you can see some of the horizontal scratches from the coarser grid that we were on earlier. Right, I'm going to approximate that this texture here that you see, the scratch pattern, is something like maybe a 240 or 120 grid. Okay, and you can see right towards the edge, right around here, there's a very faint area where it has a very smooth polish, just a slight amount. And now I'm going to rotate it around, and you can see on the other edge there, the reflection has become this kind of a dull, smooth reflection. You can still see a few of the kind of like, you can still see a few coarse lines. Okay, a few coarse lines, vertical lines, and then you can see my horizontal scratch pattern. No, not my horizontal scratch pattern, my diagonal scratch pattern. So I've removed almost all of the very thick, deep lines, and all we're left with is a sort of a brush finish there. So this is roughly what 800 grid will look like. We're gonna go up now to a higher grid, and we're gonna get rid of those diagonal lines, those 45-degree lines. Okay, and right here, you can see how everything disappears slightly towards the end there. Okay, once again, this is the chip that I was referring to. I'm not going to remove it today. I'm not going to get rid of the chip today. Not on this home setup. Just going to get the rest of it polished up. Okay, so back to sharpening again. So now we are at 1500 grid. And I'm not really here to show you anything different in technique, just to tell you that we're moving up, because the technique is exactly the same. Okay, everything that you do at every grid should be the same, because we're just trying to increase the surface quality. Each grid has no difference in terms of its usage. Okay, grinding, or whether is it you're sanding wood or you're grinding metal, you want to make sure that every time you jump grid, you're not jumping too far. You want to stay within doubling of the numbers. So from 1000 you go to 2000, from 100 you go to 200. You don't want to go from 120 and jump straight up to 800, and that's not going to do you any good. Okay, so skipping grids is actually really time inefficient, so you will be wasting time by skipping grids at too high a rate. It's not going to give you any advantage at all. So we have just moved from 800 to 1005. Okay, and the next grid should really be somewhere about 2005 to 3000, but I don't have that paper today with me, and anything above 2000 is usually very expensive, so I'm not going to show you that today. I'm not going to over-promise you with the equipment that you can't afford as a beginner. Okay, so I've really tried it. 2000 is way more than you need as a beginner, and for most of the applications, the rest of it is really up to your planing technique, your sharpening technique, and also your setup of the plane, which I will cover later in brief. Okay, so next, right here, I'm actually done with the 1500, and you can see, okay, now this is 1500. So you can see from the reflection in my blade how flat my blade is, which in this case you can see some distortion on certain points. So if you do this correctly, you will actually end up with a blade that's almost like a perfect mirror, that nothing will have any distortion. And you can see quite obviously some of the distortion in my work. And here we have the back of it. Okay, and some parts of it. So once again, we're mainly looking at the edge here. I did not polish the entire back of the blade. Okay, and then now we have the last grid in today's demonstration. This is a 2000 grid paper. So this might be a bit more difficult to buy. So you might want to try checking online. Certain high-end, like sort of more specialized hardware stores might have it. But if you can't find 2000, it is fine. 1005 would be more than enough. Okay. Once again, the technique doesn't really change. We are just trying to do the same thing again. Okay. The technique doesn't really change. So the key thing here is to try and avoid any of this flopping up. Right? Either you hold it down or you just avoid it altogether. Okay. And then put pressure going back and forth. Take your time with this. The higher the grade is, the slower it will feel and the more frustrated you will get if you're not able to see any result. So just trust in the process and don't rush it. Okay? Don't forget, 2005 is roughly about 3 times as fine as 2000 is roughly about 2.5 times as fine as 800 grit. So it will be 2.5 times slower. So don't expect to see much result so quickly. At this point, from 2000 up, even if you go to like say 6000 or 10,000 grit, you're mainly looking at a change in surface texture, like just making it look a bit shinier and a bit more polished. You're not going to be able to see much of a difference in the edge quality or feel any increase in sharpness until you actually start to plane with the blade. To start to plane with wood. Okay, so therefore a lot of faith is required in the process. You don't want to be too demanding on the results. Okay, let the strokes do the work for you, and just trust that things are happening. Okay, if you get impatient at this point and start changing angles on things, that's when you have more and more of a chance of messing things up for yourself. Okay, obviously you can go a lot faster on the flattening because it's much easier to control. But if you're going to be doing the bevel side, take note not to cut the paper. Sometimes you go too fast and you end up cutting the paper or cutting your precious water stones, and that's not something that I would say is desirable, especially not at this stage of the thing. Okay, so one key thing here for this portion here is the blade has a perfectly square edge here. So some plane sharpening. Okay, so so sometimes, right, what you want to do for a blade, right, is to just clip off the edge here, because if it's too square like this, then what you end up with is a little mark on the left and right side, right? You're gonna end up cutting a groove, a very large square groove, instead of cutting a very smooth removal of material. So sometimes we will intentionally introduce a camber. We actually curve the blade very slightly by weighting down on the left and right corners. Okay, in this case, I'm just going to do it at 2000 grit because I forgot to do it on earlier grits. So it's going to be a very, very slight one. And to do that, you're just going to raise up the one side of the blade very slightly while maintaining the angle. And you're just going to do like say 10 strokes on each side, and then you're going to come back for it later. Okay, so learn how to make the blade straight first, and then after that you can start learning how to do cambers, because you might end up just doing a camber and then claiming that was intentional, but it was something you're stuck with. So learn how to get it straight first. Okay, nothing much to watch here really. It's kind of the same thing over and over again. The next one will be I'm going to finish up and I'm going to show you the texture improvement, and then we're going to start planing right away. So see you in the next bit. Okay, final comparison. So this is 2000 grit. Okay. Shouldn't see much of a difference. Just a little bit of a clearer reflection on the blade. Just a little bit of a clearer reflection. Okay, in fact, I don't think you can even see much of a difference on camera. But let me know.